Hello, everyone. So sorry that this module is late again this week. It's my own fault, and I've been distracted. My mother's been ill. My brother is here. My niece is here. Things have just been crazy. I've been unfocused, and I should have planned for this. Because I knew better. And I just ended up at a point this weekend where I had assigned you as part of this module the thing that I usually show a clip of as part of this lecture, but for reasons of the schedule, it just seemed to make the most sense. Particularly because I need to show you guys something that you can do the same kind of thing we're going to do with the example with, and I wanted to give you something simple to start with for that. So it made perfect sense, and then I ended up picking something. I have a fallback, but that is no longer available to stream anywhere. And then I found another fallback, but I couldn't actually play it while I had my recording studio open. And I should have planned for that and pirated it earlier, and I didn't. But I found a workaround. It's going to be maybe a little clunky, but we'll get through it. It'll be great. So we are going to start our lecture today. Our lecture is on really structure and style of drama. That's where we're going to focus. But I do want to start by wrapping up the medieval period because we never got to Japan and we never talked about No and Kyogen. So I want to spend a little bit of time on that. I'm going to watch about a 10-minute clip of No and Kyogen. Oh, well, not Kyogen, just No. Just so you can get a sense for what the performance is like. And then we will move into the structure and style of drama. Then there's another clip about, I don't know, 18, maybe 20 minutes tops that I want you to watch. And then we're gonna kind of diagram it for structure. But real quick before we jump in, and I'm gonna try to make this quick because well, a few things. First of all, I know you guys are a little heavy on the viewing this week because this lecture is going to be a little long, and I know that, and I'm going to try to make it as fast as possible. And the piece that you're viewing is just shy of 3 hours, but you don't have any supplementary reading or viewings to do this week. Just the two and this lecture and that piece, and then you'll do your quiz, your essay question, and your discussion post as usual. My goal was to get this up tonight so that I could grade papers tomorrow. I'm still going to try to grade papers tomorrow. So you should get your Module 1 grades back Tuesday. That is my goal. A couple things about that. I haven't been through many of the essay questions, just a couple. So far, I like what I'm reading. A couple things. Make sure that when you are submitting your essay question, that you're submitting them as doc files and not PDFs. It creates an extra step for me to have to make it not a PDF so that I can give you feedback on it. I just leave notes in the margin and then I'll write a little blurb on the bottom with my main feedback and your grade. So that's really all I do with it, and then you get it back exactly as it is. I'm not going to change any text or anything, so I promise I'm not going to plagiarize your essay questions. So please give them to me in doc form. It saves me a step because I have to take the PDFs, convert them to docs, and then edit them, and then convert them back to PDFs because I have to re-upload them exactly the way that you uploaded them, or else the system can't find them and give them back to you. So, just be mindful of that. Also, always anything you turn in here or really in any class at the college level, uh, that is a written thing, a paper, an essay question, anything like that, should always be a Word document. It should always be in 11 or 12 point font, black ink, times New Roman font. Some people may give you a couple of other choices. I'm actually not that picky on font. As long as it's a serif font and not a sans serif font, I'm not that picky. I don't want to see Arial, right? But I don't mind if you pick Calibri or something like that. That's a serif font that's different than Times Roman. As long as you're doing 11 and 12, I don't want to get a magnifying glass to have to read it. And I may go a little hard with you on the feedback. So the first essay question in Module 1, congratulations, everybody gets 100. There was also no specific prompt, and part of the reason for that is it just helps me kind of get a sense for where everybody is in terms of where you are as critical thinkers and writers. And then that gives me a base jumping off place to work with you for the rest of the session in kind of improving your writing, improving your written communication, improving your argumentation skills. Um, One of the ones I read, I'm not going to blow anybody up by name, but it was a very interesting piece. This was the Antigone question. And they were talking about Antigone and her struggle in terms of gender in that society. And I think they were making some interesting arguments, but they made some rather sweeping kind of generalizations that weren't well supported with support from the text or from another source. And so, in this particular case of this essay question, I really pushed back on some of the statements, really questioned the argument. That's not because I disagree with the argument. And some of you, as I'm reading through these, you may find that you're in the same boat, which is why I bring this up. And it'll happen later in the semester too. Um, it doesn't mean I disagree with your argument or that I'm trying to get you to change your mind about your argument. I'm not. Here's something that you need to know about me. I'm never going to try to teach you what to think. I do not see it as my job as your instructor to tell you what to think. I don't care what you think. It's not that I don't care, but like, you know what I mean? You're independent adult people who can make up their own minds about stuff and have their own ideas about stuff. My goal is to make you be able to think critically, evaluate information, and make better arguments about what you think. And then, we can all hash it out in the marketplace of ideas, and may the best man win. I'm not worried about that. Everybody is entitled to have their opinions. And like I said, this particular piece about the gender roles really makes some good points, but there are places where I left a comment just pushing back and being like, oh, really? Well, here's an alternative argument. And it's not because I think that that alternative argument is necessarily correct. It's because I am trying to check this student to see if they've thought through all the other possibilities and this, that, and the other. One thing that would have helped this particular essay question out a lot, and so one thing I do want to clarify, is possibly getting outside sources to back up some of these broad statements about like the role of women in this society or whatever. Because they just seemed kind of assumptive, I guess, I think is the note that I gave. So, you are not required to do a research element as part of your essay question every week. I do ask that you cite the performance whenever possible for support. You should be supporting your arguments with some kind of citable thing. And then you'll use MLA or Chicago style, if you know it, for your citations and your bibliography. Either one is fine. I know both of them, and I'm fine with either. You'll probably use MLA. That's the parenthetical citations. I'm good with that. For undergraduate students in a theater class, I'm good with that. So it's good to cite from the performance, and you should do a bibliography entry and a parenthetical citation when you do that. Um, and you're not required to find outside sources, but you're not forbidden from doing it either. And sometimes it helps. Sometimes it helps bolster your argument. So don't be afraid to go and find information where you need it. Just make sure you're finding it from credible, peer-reviewed sources. Generally, I'm very happy with what I'm reading. Even that piece where I'm like, well, I really pushed back on it, and this, that, and the other. I also correct all your spelling mistakes, all your grading mistakes. Please spell check and grammar check your stuff before you turn it in. That's just smart. It's protection for you because after this time, those kinds of things you get like a point off for all of them because correcting your grammar and spelling mistakes is part of making you better writers, and that is part of my job. So I do start taking points off for that stuff. So spell check and grammar check are your friend. They can help you avoid that. So great. Let's get into this because I'm already wasting so much time and we have so much to get through, and then you have a very long viewing on top of it. So, let's jump back in briefly to the medieval period. We had covered medieval Europe, and my distaste for the liturgical dramas of Europe are now well known to you. Now we're going to jump over to Japan. The medieval period is really the first time that theater gets hopping in Japan. We'll talk about it in a minute, but there are some religious practices, some that are performance based that this all kind of originates out of. But we don't really know the exact origins of performance in Japan. Um, there is an old mythological explanation for why performance in Japan, and it goes a little something like this: the Amaterasu, who was the goddess, or is, I guess, I don't know, the goddess of the sun, she was teased by her brothers, some of the other gods, so hard and like so badly that she got very sad and very frustrated, and she just decided that she was going to go hide in a rock cave, somewhere in heaven, I guess, and withdraw from the world. And she did, and there was no more sun on the earth. And the gods saw that this was not a good thing, so they went to the rock cave and they tried to coax her out, but nobody could get her to come out. And that's when Amano Uzumeno, who is the goddess of dawn, mirth, and revelry, so she's a little bit like Dionysus in that way. She's the god of partying and also the dawn. She came up with a brilliant idea that was going to get Amaterasu out of hiding. And so she does this performance for all the gods, where she dances and recites, and she strips off her clothes. And the gods are so impressed with this amazing performance of her dancing and stripping off her clothes that they go absolutely crazy and like make a scene. So much so that Amaterasu is curious what's going on, and so she peeks out of the cave to see what the fuss is about. The sun comes back to earth, and all is well and good. And ta-da! Now we have theater in Japan. Um, Obviously, none of that is probably the real version, because it's obviously mythology. So what do we know about the origins of performance in medieval Japan? Well, we know that dance was a traditional part of Shinto religious observance. Shinto is the traditional oldest, I guess, Japanese religion. Um, and there were several things that were practiced. The kagura, or literally god music, is how that translates. Was a sacred dance that would be performed by priestesses in the Shinto temple. Um, but in the 6th century, uh, Common Era, CE, Buddhism finally arrives in Japan. It's been working its way through Asia, through from India. It's been through China. It finally makes its way to Japan, and this is in the 6th century. And with it, we get even more forms of sacred dance that come through Buddhism, by way of Hinduism, because Buddhism is an offshoot of Hinduism, right? And we know this is true thanks to a book conveniently called The Records of Ancient Things, which is a text that dates to 712 CE. And this actually is a pretty decent record of Japanese customs, cultures, religious practices that date back to the ancient culture. So we do have this text that does provide some guidance. It was pretty common in the early days to find dancers in the court, at the palace, performing for the aristocrats, for the shogun, for the emperor. But in 782, that practice was outlawed, and the dancers were banished from the palace and from the shogun's domicile. And they kind of had nowhere to go. And what ended up happening is they were kind of absorbed and incorporated into the Shinto and Buddhist temples. And then they plied their trade as professional dancers in performing these dance rituals that were happening in Japanese Shinto and Buddhist temples. Um, there are two of these dances that come over with Buddhism that are clear ancestors to no performance, no drama, which is the first kind of performance tradition that breaks open in Japan. It won't be the only. We'll get some more in the Renaissance. The first of these is Dengaku. which literally translates to field music. Um, this is not a traditional Japanese practice. Again, this comes with Buddhism as Buddhism travels across Asia. So we think that this is something that gets incorporated into it as it's moving across the Korean peninsula, which is right across the water from Japan. This Dengaku, this dance is associated with the spring rice sowing and fall rice harvest festivals. So they would plant the rice in the spring, they would harvest the rice in the fall, um, and this dance and it included comedy, juggling, and dance, right? All three. So you have this Dengaku. And then there is a kind of similar thing, which is the Sarugaku, which literally translates to monkey music. This is believed to have originated in China and kind of found its way over and then kind of evolved in its own way. And this featured animal acts and nudity for some reason. But more important for our purposes, it also included a dance theater and a chorus that would speak lines while a dancer acted out what they were saying in a traditional dance vocabulary. Um, in the 12th century, Common Era, the Buddhist temples kind of clean up Sarugaku, get the nudity and the animals out of it, and and they make it a little more presentable and a little more family friendly. And then they start using it. They've now renamed it as Sarugaku no, and now they use it as a teaching tool to spread the words of Buddhist philosophy, right? So let's zoom out for a second before we get into like no proper and just talk a minute about medieval Japan because it is very different from medieval Europe and very different from Greece and Rome, which is where the other cultures we've kind of been to. So Japan, up until the 19th century, when the Americans show up there with warships and force trade open with the Japanese people who prior to this have been isolationist and do not allow foreigners onto their soil and do not allow anyone who leaves to return. This is a pretty simple feudalist agrarian society. So what does that mean? Well, agrarian just means they're farmers. Their economy is based on farming. And feudalism is an old system of government. We're going to kind of talk about it. But it's basically based on land grants. So the governor or the kind of aristocrats in charge, the feudal lords, the shogun, and the daimyo, and we'll talk about who these people are and what they do, they would grant to people land to farm. And in exchange, they would be entitled to a certain cut of the crops. And then they would provide for those people through the shogunate or through the samurai, military service and police protection. In a feudalist society, land is critical to social relationships. So what you have basically is a highly stratified caste system, not unlike what you've probably heard they have in India, right? So at the very tip top, you have the emperor. And the emperor in Japan at this time is basically a no-show job. Um, it's an inherited position that you get because your dad was it, and your granddad was it, and your great granddad was it, your great great granddad was it, and this is at a time in the medieval period where people didn't live the longest of lives, so you do end up with a situation in Japan. It happened a lot and happened in China several times too, where like the emperor would end up being like a toddler and obviously did not have the capacity to run a nation because he was still learning to read. So the emperor really, over by this point in time, has kind of become a ceremonial position, right? You have it because you inherit it. You don't really do anything or have any real power. That's because the real power was held by the shogun. And the shogun is on the road just below the emperor. I don't actually like this image because I would put the daimyo on a separate level below. Because the shogun is kind of like the general, right? He's like a general in our army. That's the closest thing we can kind of compare him to. And he was kind of responsible and oversaw the daimyo, who are the lords, right? And the lords then control the samurai, who are below them. And samurai are like knights, and the samurai are basically the police and the military. And so you have like a regional setup where like you have the emperor and the shogun, who are for the whole country, and then every region or prefecture would have a daimyo, a lord. They would have their own set of samurai, who would be the knights, who would provide the military and police protection. And then below them, you have peasants and artisans. The peasants would farm the land. The artisans were craftspeople. They made pots, silverware, dishes, pots and pans, wheels, shoes for horses, whatever you needed, right? They made it. And they were below. And so the artisans would pay the samurai for their service and the daimyo for providing the samurai to them with goods and services, and the peasants with crops, usually rice. Um, so that's kind of how you pay it up. You get services down, is basically how feudalism works. At the very bottom of the caste system in Japan at this time are the merchants. And the reason for that is because they don't make anything. They just buy stuff and sell it. So that makes them less valuable than everyone else because everyone else is providing a service, making, growing, right? They're creating, building, making, growing crops, protecting people, providing services, providing protection, providing land, whatever they're doing. The merchants are just selling people crap, and the Japanese didn't really have a lot of respect for that. Wealth at the time in Japan was measured in rice, not in land ownership. In Europe, later the United States, right? Your goal is to like you want to buy property, you want to have assets. That wasn't really the case in feudal Japan because you were just granted land. The daimyo would give you the land. You would give the daimyo a share of the crops, right? And then they would protect you with samurai. So so rice is more valuable than land in medieval Japan, which is really interesting. Um, so that is kind of a microcosm of what the kind of social structure of Japan is at this time and where this tradition is kind of being born out of. So that system, the feudalist system, was dominate from the 12th century in the Middle Ages until the 19th century when Admiral Perry and American warships showed up and suddenly Japan traded with the West and quickly industrialized. But prior to that, it was feudalist. And that was its system for 600 years. Going back to No, Kiyotsugu Kanami was an acclaimed performer of Suragaku no, and these are the cleaned up version, right? That the Buddhist temples are using as teaching tools to spread the philosophy, right? Well, he is a very good performer of these sacred dances, and he becomes, in the course of his life, a patron of the shogun, who, at the time of his life, was very interested in the arts. And to be the patron of the shogun is quite an honor because now your entire career and your life is basically being financed by him while you work on passion projects. Kanami has a son named Zeamo Motokiyo, and Zeamo Motokiyo later on, when he grows up, he will become the shogun's patron and also his lover. And the father and the son are the two major figures here. So the father combines the Sarugaku no with traditional stories from classical Japanese sources that everybody would have known, and then kind of ties them up and marries them to like Buddhist philosophy. And it's a nice, neat little package, and that's kind of the beginning of No. Um, it gets perfected by the son, who just continues tweaking the form and just making it a little tighter. Then he writes the dramaturgical theory that defines it, what it is, how it's performed. And then he writes 100 of the plays that were at the time considered no canon. Of those 100 plays that Zeamo Motokiyo wrote, we have 21 still today. So what exactly is no drama? So, characteristics of no. The plays as written texts, the dramas themselves are very short. Scripts average about 10 pages. But those 10 pages can take anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours to perform. And that is because, as you'll see, we're going to watch about 10 minutes of a no piece. As you'll see, the art of no is about technical proficiency. It's about subtlety and grace. It's about duration and tempo. Everything is slow. It's very static. It's very much about this kind of delivery, right? So these pieces can move very slowly, and 10 pages can take forever. We're gonna watch 10 minutes of this performance. I'll bet you hear 6 lines total in 10 minutes, all told, and 2 characters enter. So that's it. And after the second character enters, I cut it. So yeah, it's a very intentional, very very deliberate, and very slowly paced art type of theater. A typical no performance, like in medieval times when people were going to watch them, would typically involve a performance from one of each of the 5 types of no plays. There are 5 types. We'll talk about it, what they are, but you would see one of each of the 5. So a performance of no could take up to 8 hours or more. And it sounds absolutely butt-numbing to me. But this was a different time. They didn't have cell phones. They didn't have our attention span. They had a lot of hours in a day, and outside of work, not a ton of things to do to entertain them. So that, it was a different time. Attention spans were more charitable, I think. Each no play consists of 2 scenes. They are written in a mix of verse and prose, so that means they're part poetry and part just spoken prose. Most of the text is either sung or chanted by the actors or by the small chorus and the band, the orchestra that is upstage. Most of the plays feature a ghost, a demon, or some kind of tormented or like mad person who can't find peace. They can't find rest. Their torment is kind of the main thing of the play, and that is being explored. Every no play ends in a dance, every single one, but it is not a boisterous, exciting dance. It is a slow, delicate, graceful, long duration, slow tempo, small movement kind of dance. So let's talk about the 5 types of no play. So the first of these is kamimono. And kamimono are no plays that feature the story of a sacred Shinto shrine. Again, this is going back to Shinto religious practice, so we're celebrating these kinds of sacred locations in the kamimono. In the shuramono, these are plays that feature warrior characters, samurais, warriors, soldiers, right? Shuramono. Then we have the katsuramono, which literally translates to wig play. These are plays that feature women characters as the lead, but of course they're played by men because women are not allowed to perform in no drama, because it is the Middle Ages and they're not allowed on the stage. I will add that no drama is still performed today in Japan in exactly the same way that it was in the 12th century. It hasn't changed at all. It hasn't evolved at all. It is very much about the execution of this particular style of performance and the smallness, the slow tempo, this duration. And even to this day, women do not perform in no drama. It hasn't changed. Um, and I think the fact that it's performed by men personally, when you see it, I think you'll see why I think this. I think that's part of the appeal. Men are not typically, we are not graceful figures. We're stompers, clompers, and this is very small, very quiet movements, very graceful movements, very feminine movements that men are not exceptional at making. So I think if women were doing it, it would be far less impressive than watching these men do it. So the next one, the fourth one, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. This one's kind of a grab bag. It's like a choose your own adventure, right? So you have, you can do a Gendai Mono, which features a naturalistic story, or you can do a Kyojo Mono, which are literally madwoman plays. And these are wig plays where the Shite, the lead actor, is a woman who loses a child or a lover and has gone or is going insane. And that is the Kyojo Mono. And then the last, the fifth of these is the Kichuku Mono, which feature supernatural beings, ghosts, demons, etc. No drama is philosophical. The main thing that it's trying to do is communicate these Shinto and Buddhist ideas. Very concerned with nature, very concerned with man's connection to nature, the transitory nature of life, the destructive potential of desire, all of which is very Buddhist stuff, right? The man's connection to nature, that's very Shinto. Very, very Shinto. And it is static. It's not kinetic. Like I said, it's small actions. It's little movements. It's about graceful. It's about long durations and slow tempos. So it's static. It's a lot of stillness. It's a lot of moving very slowly. It's a lot of moving not at all. It's about a lot of singing this line very slowly. Why take 30 seconds to say the line when you can take 5 minutes to sing it? And they do. And you'll see this when we watch the example, because it's very interesting the way that it's performed. You read these scripts and they're nothing. You can read one in 15 minutes, less probably, and get everything you need to get out of it. But when you watch it in performance, it's rather something completely different. So in the no drama, there is very little dramatic action because the point is not to tell a story. The point is not to convey character. The point is to create and convey a mood. Each no drama has a mood. You are there to kind of create that mood with your musicians, with your chorus, with your actors, right? The actors dance, the actors sing, the actors recite and chant, and that's it. You want to create whatever mood that the play is requiring you to create. A no play must have at least 3 characters. Some have as many as 5. None have, at least none that survive today anyway, have more than that. So in the no drama, there are 3 essential character types that the actors themselves would play. The first of these, I know that word looks like shite, like the British spelling for shit, but it's not. It's a Japanese word, and it's pronounced shite. And the shite is the main character. And in No, they are the only character in the drama, the only actor in the drama to wear a mask. And they are masked the whole time. Everybody else comes out in their bare face, no mask. The shite wears a mask. The second character type is the tsure, which is the shite's companion, their escort, right? And then you have the waki, or the witness, or the antagonist, right? This is going to be the opposing force for the shite. Sometimes the Shite arrives in disguise and then has to reveal him or herself by the end. Uh, or in other ones, they are two distinct characters. In the one we're going to look at a sample from today, there's a woman who arrives at a shrine, and the walkie has entered right before her, which is this old man who's come to the shrine. And the woman, by the end of the play, will be revealed to be a ghost who is grieving a lost loved one that I think is buried at the shrine or has some kind of something at the shrine. I don't remember the specifics. I didn't watch it again. But I've seen it several times. But she's a ghost, and that's her big reveal is, ta-da, I'm a ghost. And that she has this kind of grief, this cycle of grief that she's kind of trapped in. Not really two distinct characters, but there is a reveal. It's not really a disguise either, but there is a reveal that she is a supernatural character rather than just a woman who is there grieving a loved one. So in between the separate no plays, because remember I told you there would be 5, right, in a performance, in between the 5, and possibly sometimes, we're not sure, between scenes, there would be performances of kyogen. And kyogen were the accompanying pieces to no plays. And kyogen are the comedies, I guess you could say. There are 2 types. Parodies of no, which are not terribly dissimilar from the satyr plays of ancient Greece. They're just making fun of no dramas that the audience would be familiar with, right, and have seen before, but they lampoon them. And then there are ones that are scenes of everyday life involving stock characters, which sounds an awful lot like Roman comedy, right? Unlike the Greek and Roman comedies, though, kyogen were never vulgar. There was never any sexual content, there was never dirty jokes, there was never scatological humor, anything like that in the kyogen. The Japanese culture doesn't really stand for that kind of stuff, at least not back then. They're a little more freaky today, I think, in terms of some things that they're open to and not open to, but back then they were a very, very conservative society, and there was no vulgarity in their theater. The kyogen are short. They usually do not involve music of any kind, where the no drama has 2 drummers and a shakuhachi player. No music in the kyogen. And despite the language being more casual than in no, you still have this thing of like the technical performance of the kyogen matters. So it's not unlike the no. We're still looking for that perfection of performance in the technical dexterity of what the actors are doing. So here is a diagram of what a no theater would look like. And let me get my cursor out here. So you see this front part here, this building here with this roof that resembles kind of a traditional Japanese Shinto temple. Here you have features that are kind of like a Shinto temple. This roof is supported by 4 support columns, right? This area here, where this is the main performance area. This is called the Hanbutai, and it's the main playing area. It resembles Shinto shrine. They would put jars and embed jars under the floor, the wood planks of the floor, to help dampen the sound of the feet walking and to help to reinforce the acoustics. You'll notice here on the back wall there is a painting of a pine tree in a kind of bonsai little arrangement that is always present in a no theater. Always. It never looks different than this, ever. Then over here, this thing is the Hashigakari. And the Hashigakari is this bridge at stage right. It's always at stage right. And a note about this while we're looking at this, in case you're not aware of this. So when you're talking about directions on stage, it's always from the actor's right or left. So when I say that this is stage right, and you're probably looking at it and saying, but it's on my left. Yes, it's on the audience's left. But if you're an actor standing on the stage looking at the audience, it would be on your right. I'm a director. I have to do this reversal in my head all the time. I mess it up constantly, so you will too, and it's fine. Everybody understands what you're just like, go off right, left, and go over there. So I get it and I sympathize. I do it all the time. But this is stage right, and this is the Hashigakari, and basically this long walkway would be how the actors would enter into the playing space. There, you'll see in the video, there's like a, a, a drape or some kind of pulleyed fabric that masks this entrance, and then it kind of gets pulled up toward the roof to allow entrance and egress for the actors who come down here at a very slow tempo, come down into the playing area and begin their delivery. There's no other scenery besides this. The three pine trees on either side of the Hashigakari, and those are meant to symbolize heaven, earth, and man. It's a very Shinto idea to have these trees, to have man's nature to the trees, and what that relationship is, and have them symbolize these things. The main characters enter and exit from the Hashigakari, and that's it. No other scenery. This is it. The spectacle comes from the movement and also the costumes. The actors wear elaborate, beautiful costumes. You'll see them. They really are something. And then a lot of the theatrical spectacle, aside from the dance, comes from the way that they handle and utilize hand props, like folding fans, the way that they manipulate them and utilize them. In front of this this mirror board thing where this is painted, there would be the Hayashi. And the Hayashi is a 3-person orchestra. They sit in front of the back wall. You'll see them in the sample we're going to watch. And they're dressed as traditional samurai. 2 of them are drummers. They're playing a traditional Japanese drum. And one of them is playing the shakuhachi. The shakuhachi is the traditional Japanese flute. It is carved from some kind of reedy wood. It has a very reedy sound. You've heard it before in a lot of like Asian inflected stuff or Asian sounding stuff. As a way to provide color in a movie score or something. You'll hear it when we watch the sample, and it'll sound familiar to you. I think it's a very interesting instrument with a very interesting sound. I've always really loved the sound of it. Additionally to that, there's a chorus of approximately 6 people who sing and chant lines, narration, and then when the shite is busy dancing and can't get the breath to say their lines, then the chorus speaks for the shite. And the chorus would sit at stage left, in front of the stage left wall. And they would they would occasionally do some ritual like prayer movements. You'll see it in the performance we're going to watch. And then they just chant their lines and watch the drama. Not unlike the Sanskrit drama, the acting in No is highly gestural and codified. By codified, I mean there is only one correct way to perform it. If you remember, with Sanskrit drama, the Natya Shastra, the document that detailed all the different ways to act, and the ways to act were like 13 ways to move your eyes, 17 ways to move your nose, 18 ways to move your fingers, and that's what is meant by gestural acting. There's only a certain number of moves you can make, and anything outside of that is not permissible, so it's codified. And gestural because it's not like acting today, post Chekhov, post method, which we'll talk about when we get to modernism. But it's posing. It's posing to communicate emotion rather than actually feeling emotion or emoting emotion. It's really just gesturing to create the illusion of emotion. This is pretty standard across acting until like the beginning of the 20th century. It's a lot of posing, because you don't get psychological depth in characters and acting until Stanislavski in Russia in the early 20th century. Actors in No go through very rigorous training, and they begin around the time they're 7 years old. They would be apprenticed to an experienced No actor or No teacher, and they would begin their training. And the reason for that is there are no directors in No theater, and nothing that resembles what we would call rehearsal. So they just show up and perform these pieces. They are expected to know them. They are expected to know how to perform them. There is a repertory of them. You should know them. If you are the shite, then you should know all of the shite parts. And you should be able to perform them on command perfectly. And the performances are expected to be perfect every time. Again, it is about technical perfection. It is about how difficult it is to perform them and how well people rise to that challenge. So, like I mentioned before, the shite wears a mask. There are 5 types of masks. Here you see an image with some of the examples of what those looked like. So the 5 types are aged, if they had to play an elderly person, right? Male for the dude characters, female for the lady characters, god for the god characters, and monster, which could be a monster, could be a ghost, could be a demon, right? Any of the above. And then the way that the actors approach the drama is it's kind of a 3-pronged technique, right? And the 3 prongs are mano mane, which is identifying with and embodying the character. So you have to find a way to kind of embody the character. Yugen, which is lending embodiment elegance while emphasizing the impermanence of life. I have been a performer. I have been a director. I have no idea how you do that. But that's why they start training at age 7. I don't know how, I mean, I know how you lend embodiment elegance. Like, you strive for elegance in your performance. The emphasizing impermanence of life part is a little harder to communicate in a dance, and I'm not really sure how they were expected to do it. And then the last one is Hana, which literally translates to flower, and that is to endow the performance with spontaneity. Make every time seem like the first time, make every performance slightly different than the last time you did it. Not exactly different because we're looking for technical perfection, but you want to put your own spin on it. You want to have your own kind of style, your own voice, your own flair. No was primarily a court entertainment, meaning that it was held at the palace for aristocrats, the emperor, the shogunate, the daimyo, right? It wasn't for peasants, it wasn't for merchants, it wasn't for artisans, it wasn't really for samurai. It was for the daimyo and for the shogun and for the emperor. And the people that were their social peers. Unlike in Rome, medieval Europe, and some of the other cultures that we've talked about, the Japanese revered and respected their actors for their technical capability, and actors were celebrated. Actors were they were very happy to have actors in their company. They did not treat the actors badly as they did in Rome, as medieval Europe, which just made acting illegal unless it was part of a religious ceremony. At the height of No's popularity, many actors actually rose out of the mercantile, artisan, or peasant castes and got all the way up to the samurai caste, which is not as high as the aristocrats, but it's still it was being an actor was a good way to be upwardly socially mobile. So this is the example that we're going to look at. This is from the No performance Tomoe by Mikata Shizuka. So this is set at a Shinto temple. We start with we have the music of the 2 drummers and the shakuhachi, and then they sing a little bit while they're making music, and then we'll have the entrance of the waki, who is the kind of antagonist of the piece, who is this old man who's come up the mountain to the shrine. And shortly after that, then the shite will enter as this woman who later in the drama, where we won't watch because we're only going to watch about 10 minutes of it, reveals herself as a ghost who is, trapped in this kind of cycle of being a ghost because she's grieving this person, a lover, or I believe it's her lover. So I can't, because this is embedded in here, blow this up, but we're gonna watch about 10 minutes of this, and then we'll move on. And the clips of what we're watching, unfortunately, are the big time eater in the lecture today. So without further ado, here is Tomoe. But that is a little sample of no. As you can see, very, very precise, very specific, very small, slow tempos, long durations, small, graceful movements. Um, when the walkie entered for some of that time coming down the bridge, stage right, he almost looked like he was floating. And that's kind of the technical precision that I was talking about. Also, the way that they sing these lines, the way that they move their arms, their hands, the gestures, etc. So, that's no drama, and that wraps up the medieval period. And so now we've basically done proto theater, right? The Greeks, the Romans, the medieval Europeans, and the medieval Japanese. Um, this is kind of what we have up to this point that we can kind of pinpoint and say, yes, this is definitive theater as we understand it. So I always think this is a good time to pause the historical exploration and talk about dramatic structure because it starts to matter. So we have a dramatic structure, right, for Greek tragedy. We have our choral odes, we have our three actor scenes, right? We may have more than three characters, but each scene has three actors. We don't have more than three actors. Sometimes early on we only have two. We have our reversal of fortune and our tragic flaw, right? Our hubris, our pride. So we have all of these things that are part of the dramatic structure of Greek tragedy. Greek comedy gets its own dramatic structure with, less choral odes and more kind of direct address from the chorus to the audience, and then the chorus kind of goes away. We have the stock characters, we have the domestic situations, right? We have the farcical elements, the mistaken identity, reversals, etc., etc., right? So we've already talked a little bit about dramatic structure for these things. The medieval morality play. Everybody's a symbol, everybody is preaching. Right, so we've talked a little bit about this, but like starting with the Renaissance, which we'll do starting in the next modules next week, this becomes much more important. So I think it's good to kind of nail down some vocabulary and get on the same page about what we're even talking about when we talk about dramatic structure. And the best way to do that is to kind of go backwards and then go forward. So let's review Aristotle's Poetics. We talked about it in last week's module in the lecture. So Aristotle, Greek philosopher, lived from 384 to 322 BCE. Many people consider him one of the greatest thinkers who ever lived. In addition to his writing on theater and poetry, he wrote very important, indispensable works that we still cite to this day on topics as varied as natural science, linguistics, philosophy, economics, politics, and psychology. Aristotle was a polymath, so that meant that he had mastered multiple disciplines and subjects simultaneously. He was a master of many subjects. In Poetics, what he does is he writes the first written account, at least that we know of what dramatic structure is. And mostly our dramatic structure in the West still adheres to Aristotle's observations. Not all of them, but the general overview of them. And we're going to go over what that is and how that works. So in Poetics, Aristotle starts from the observation that mankind has a natural instinct for what he calls mimesis, or which is a need to enact an imitation of life. So that's really all theater is. It's a modern actor, a post Stanislavskian actor would say that the art of acting is the art of living truthfully in imaginary circumstances. They did not have Stanislavski. They were not really seeking truth and authenticity in their performance at this point in time, but rather just trying to kind of enact imitations of life in order to create understanding of life, right? But the main thing that is important there is that mimesis, this an imitation that we're enacting, it exists in action, and that's why we call it acting, because it is in action. Good acting is always in action. So we're gonna delve into his observations on structure, but let's define terms because I love getting on the same page about that kind of stuff. One of the main things we need to talk about is often the words drama and theater get used interchangeably, and they can be used interchangeably. For our purposes in this class, I will probably still use them interchangeably because they just are in a modern context. But we really do need to be careful to differentiate between drama and theater because they are distinct from each other, at least for the purposes of this lecture in this class today. Maybe not for the whole class, but for this week, for this module. And the distinction is this: drama is written and theater is enacted. So the drama is basically the script, right? The script that the actor gets at the beginning of the process is the drama. It can be literature. You can read it by yourself. You can read it out loud with friends. You can read it in an English class, right? You can read it in a political science class if it's appropriate to the subject matter. But its true purpose is not to be read. Its true purpose is to be seen. So you have to think of the drama, the script, as a blueprint for the ultimate performance, the theater, because that's what it is. Think of it as the script providing notes that guide the actor into how to perform the theater, right? So the actors take those instructions that are in the drama, that are in the script, those notes, those instructions, and they translate them into actions that they then perform. And those actions are theater. So drama is words written on a page. Theater is actions performed in mimesis, if that makes sense. But that is a distinction that's very important to make because we are going to talk about drama and theater. We're going to talk about performance and the written text. And I think using these two words separately for the purposes of describing them is a really helpful way to do it. Drama is the written word. Theater is the enacted, performed art that is being delivered from the performance of those words. So let's talk about poetics and the 6 elements of drama as Aristotle lays them out. And I know we touched on this in Module 1 and we just kind of like hit the high points. We're going to actually delve into this stuff today and what he kind of was talking about and what he meant in a deeper way, and then kind of extrapolate how that starts to develop over time. So the 6 elements of drama, according to Aristotle in the Poetics, are plot, which we're going to define more succinctly. It's not just the story, it has a more specific meaning, and we'll get to that in a second. Character, which we're going to go in depth on. Thought, or theme, or idea. Diction, or poetry, or language. Song, or music. And spectacle. One thing to keep in mind with this list of words, these are the words I prefer. But remember, Poetics was originally written in Greek, and it is coming to us in translation. I don't know how much experience you have with anything that's literature in translation. But boy, do you sure miss stuff, and boy, is there a lot of flexibility in it. So you may see this list listed other places, and they use different words, right? Instead of thought, they use theme, or they use idea. Instead of diction, they use language, or poetry. Instead of song, they use music, or sound. Any of those is fine. It's a matter of personal taste because it's in translation. Translation is a weird thing. I speak French, and I have read and seen plays by Molière, who's a great French playwright, in French, and they are hilarious and beautiful. And then I have seen them in English, and they make me want to pull my hair out. It sounds like Dr. Seuss to me. I think Molière in English is terrible. And it's because it doesn't translate, primarily because French is a very different language than English, and it goes the other way. You will very seldom meet a French person who likes Shakespeare, and that is because Shakespeare does not translate well into French. English is a Germanic language. It's in iambic pentameter. It's the blank verse is kind of structured for the English and German language. Now the Germans love Shakespeare because it translates nicely, because it fits into iambic pentameter. They also get blank verse Shakespeare. It's translation, but it it doesn't disrupt the verse of the thing. Whereas if you put Shakespeare in French, like it's a gobbledygook, right? And the French tend to hate Shakespeare. They think he's overrated. They don't understand. This is a function of coming to the drama or the theater in translation, and it's a very weird thing. I translated a Spanish Golden Age play for my master's thesis myself because I couldn't find a version that I liked, and I hated my version too. It's a very tricky thing to come up with a good translation that actually captures the essence of the thing, because it is very hard when moving from one language to another to do that. It's just really difficult. So let's break these down in more detail, more succinctly. I'll try to speed this up and get us through it because we still have like 20-minute clip to watch. So plot. Let's go in detail. So plot, we were calling it the story, right? What happens in the play, right? Plot is defined as the structure of incidents in the play. That is the official definition for plot. Those incidents should be in cause and effect relationships. So I'm a director by trade, and when I'm directing a show, one of the things that I do as part of my preparation and pre-production is I will at some point go through the script, and I will make a list of chronological events that happen before or during the play that impact the actions of the play. And I will list all those events out on, like, it usually takes like 10 or 12 double spaced pages or whatever, but I make a kind of list of events. And then I go through it, and from the top, I start matching events, cause and effect. Here's an event. The first event must be a cause, because nothing could, like, whatever caused it. And you go through and you chart. You make sure every event has a cause and an effect. And then the event that affects causes something else, right? So it's like a chain of cause and effect. It's a chain of events, right? And then I go back through that list backwards and double check myself. If you have an event in that list that doesn't have a cause or an effect, you're missing something. There's something that happens that you're not locking into, and you need to go back and reevaluate. Super helpful. I can't take credit for it. It comes from a book called Backwards and Forwards, which that's basically the whole point of the book, is like, hey, list all the events, make sure they're cause and effect going forward, and then double check them going backwards. But it's amazing because it's a chain of cause and effect events. Aristotle named plot first as the main ingredient. It's the first thing in the list because he said it was the most important ingredient of the drama. And the point of the plot is to be an imitation of action, complete and whole. A plot must have a clear beginning, middle, and end. It must kind of cohere to itself in terms of that. It must be developed with logic and suspense. You want to build suspense because you want to keep the audience invested, and logic because you don't want them thinking about the plot holes, right? And it must be believable, again, because plot holes, right? And you don't want it to strain the limits of credibility, at least according to Aristotle, because then, people are gonna, look at you side-eye. I can think of a million movies that fit this. The first one that came to mind is Troll 2, if you've ever seen it. Has nothing to do with trolls, isn't a sequel to the movie Troll, and isn't believable, and isn't developed with logic or suspense, despite the fact that it's trying to pass itself off as a horror movie. I'm sure you can think of other examples. That one's rather obscure. If you haven't seen it and you like bad movies, though, I highly recommend it. It's one of the worst. But that's just the first one that came to my mind. There are tons of them. Tons and tons. So the drama, the script, is only concerned with the events that it covers, right? So there may be more to the story, but it's irrelevant to the play if it doesn't occur in the play. And to kind of elucidate what I mean by this, it's probably best to think back to the Greeks, right? Because the Greeks were doing these mythological plays, often about the gods or about these mythological heroes like Odysseus, or these kind of royal houses of the past that had these tragic downfalls, right? Like the House of Thebes, Oedipus and Antigone and Ismene and Polynices and Eteocles and all those folks. Or you have the House of Atreus, which is Agamemnon and Clytemnestra and Orestes and Electra and Iphigenia and all the tragic ends that they come to. Um, Everybody in the audience knew these stories, and they knew different variations on these stories, and they knew that there was stuff before and after. Taking Antigone as an example, Antigone is actually a play that takes place in the aftermath of a very important mythological story that was itself dramatized as Greek tragedy. We have an extant tragedy called Seven Against Thebes, a very old one by Aeschylus, that dramatizes the conflict between Eteocles and Polynices and the battle that kills them both, that leads now to this crisis where Antigone is forced to choose between her duty to the king, Creon, and his forbiddance that anybody should bury Polynices for being a traitor, and her duty to her family and her brother that says that she owes her brother a proper sacred burial. Um, Everybody in the audience would have known the Seven Against Thebes story. It doesn't figure in probably to the Antigone trilogy, whatever it was. Um, so it's mentioned because some of those events are important. The fact that Eteocles and Polynices are dead is important. The specifics of who were the soldiers at which particular of the seven gates of Thebes, etc., irrelevant, and it doesn't come up. Whereas in Aeschylus's play is uniquely concerned with that and doesn't mention Antigone and Ismene at all because they're not important, right? So the events in the play are only the events that have to be in the play. It only dramatizes the compelling events. It skips the mundane and irrelevant actions of the characters. If you think about most movies that you watch, you're going to see the high points, right? You're never going to see 27 minutes of somebody watching the news in a movie, right? We can do through montage, through story beats, through acting, we can kind of communicate that, oh, this person's been watching TV for a half an hour or whatever, right? And we can skip the TV watching part and get to the next major event, okay? If they are showing you stuff like that, if they are showing you stuff like a character aimlessly driving or walking around doing kind of the same things and not really doing much of anything at all, then probably that's character information that you should look into. Why is this person kind of aimless? Why is this person kind of drifting? Why does this person seem to have no purpose or no focus? That's probably important information. Otherwise, they're going to leave it out because why? They're not going to have a 15-minute sequence in a movie where the character drives to work because it would take them 15 minutes to drive to work. There are exceptions to this. There's a very famous French movie called Jeanne Dielman, which is a kind of one of the great masterpieces of the feminist cinema, and it's about this housewife, and most of the movie is just watching this woman do housework in real time, and it's kind of boring. But then, like, by the end, she murders somebody, so it gets a little more exciting later. But, most of the movie is just watching this lady go about her day-to-day life as this kind of stifled housewife, and it's boring. Um, but the boringness is the point. The kind of mundane repetition of her life is what they want you to take away from it because it helps to explain the murder that she creates later. So, leaving aside plot and moving on to character, which was the second thing that Aristotle listed, characters are the human beings who inhabit the action. And they are the human beings that inhabit the action, even in the case of like movies where they are animals. Okay? So, Bambi may be a deer who looks like a deer, but that's not really a deer, that's a human being because it's an anthropomorphized animal. So you can always consider characters human beings. We can't relate. I mean, there are exceptions, right? There were Benji movies in the 70s and like Homeward Bound, and like I can think of a few movies where like animals played the leads and they didn't really have lines. and they just kind of did with like cute looks and faces and probably some animal abuse. They got some kind of performance out of these animals that like told some kind of narrative story. I never liked movies like that, even when I was a kid. Mostly characters are human beings because we don't relate to animals necessarily. We don't. Uh, Even our animal characters are going to be human beings, almost always. The audience's involvement in the drama is measured entirely by their interest in the characters. Um, this is actually really interesting, and this is something that I have noticed recently in to kind of tie it into our modern times and our modern culture where we live. I've noticed kind of about movies nowadays. There is this kind of thing that goes on with, like, say, the new Star Wars movies, right? And and there's a kind of fan backlash to like the main character Rey Skywalker, right? This chick who's the main character of the new Star Wars movies, and then people are critical of the movies, and then it kind of gets written off as like, oh, well, all the Star Wars fanboys are like misogynist a-holes who don't want a woman lead. And um, my read of the situation is slightly different than that because I just think it doesn't really have anything to do with that really at all. The issue isn't that the lead in Star Wars is a chick. I don't think anybody cares that the main character of the new Star Wars is a chick. I think what they care about is that she is this kind of like Mary Sue character who has no flaws. She's kind of badass in the beginning, she's badass in the middle, and she's badass in the end. And she has nothing that she needs to learn. She has nothing that she needs to overcome. The first time she picks up a lightsaber, she's the greatest lightsaber fighter in the world. The first time she tries to use the Force, she's a master of the Force. I mean, it took Luke Skywalker like 3 movies originally to learn how to like master the Force. Yeah, no, this girl just was born with it. She just got the chi flowing through her, and she's the master of the Force, and she can repair the Millennium Falcon without ever looking at the owner's manual. She's just a master of all trades. She's amazing. If only like the intergalactic patriarchy would get out of her way and let her achieve her potential. And it's fine, I guess, as a political message, but it doesn't make for a very compelling character because you have nothing to root for because she has no growth. Because if you're already awesome, how are you going to get better? What do you have to grow into? More awesome? Same awesome? Like, so I just think it's not that she's a chick. I think it's just that she's not very interesting. And our involvement in the Star Wars is entirely measured by our interest in Rey Skywalker, right? So that's just a kind of modern day example that I have noticed. There are others. I'm sure you will have some of your own. But really, if the audience isn't involved in your characters, then they're not going to care about the play. They're just not. Um, the depth of the characters gives the play its potency. The deeper the characters, the more likely the play is to work and to resonate. The more shallow the characters, the less people are likely to care. The less the characters grow and change or have stuff at stake in the world, the less people are going to care. Characters must be plausible for the fictive world of the drama. That means they have to make sense in whatever world they're in. But, and this is very important, the fictive world creates its own plausibility. So they don't have to necessarily be plausible for our world. You can, great example of this, if you've ever seen any of the Alien movies, right? The antagonist of those movies is this metal hybrid biological cyborgy kind of alien being that like has acid spit and acid blood and like it's nonsense. I don't even know. I don't even know where this would come from that it would have that kind of biology. It doesn't matter because the fictive world of the alien movies creates the plausibility that allows for that alien creature to exist, right? As an example. Um, there are many scholars and playwrights, especially, who would argue that Aristotle was actually wrong, that it is not plot that is the most important element of the drama, it's character. I would split the baby and say that it's actually both and they're kind of equal. You need a good plot and you need good characters inside of that plot, or else you're going to have a very hard time ginning up audience interest in what you are doing. So let's move on to thought, which is the next of um, the elements of drama that Aristotle lays out. So thought, we would today more commonly refer to it as theme, and it's just the play's topic or central idea. So there is a theater director, a very influential theater director named Anne Bogart, and she has a very famous quote where she says that plays ask question, and it is necessary for the director of a play to figure out what that question is that the play is asking, and to know that so that they know what they're dealing with. I think it's slightly more complicated than that. I would go a little further. I would say that it's not just that it's asking a question, but that every play actually offers you two thematic forces in conflict. And the real crux of the drama is which of those two thematic forces is going to win. Um, but and we'll talk about it. But the theme, but this is all kind of subtextual, right? It shouldn't be obvious. Uh, and the reason for that is that the audience will get bored of a play very quickly if the theme is too obvious. You don't want it highlighted. You don't want to put it on a marquee in lights for the audience's sake. This is another thing I've noticed about kind of contemporary movies as they've kind of fallen off in recent years. There is a tendency, like say Disney will put out a movie, just as an example. I don't know that this is specific, but they'll put out a movie because they're racing to put out a press release where they can say something like, "We're going to do the first animated film to feature a lead character who's I, I don't know, disabled, trans, indigenous, black Eskimo or something, right? And that is kind of the main point, it seems, of the project. Totally is for this press release, right? So they can put it out that they were the first to kind of feature this type of whatever character I made that example of, to be as ridiculous as I could, but it doesn't really matter. It's an LGBTQ, Inuit, disabled, trans, lesbian, Cuban immigrant, whatever. It doesn't matter. They want to put out the press release that says they made the movie about the first one. People don't really go see the movie because the movie doesn't really have a good story and it doesn't really have good characters. What it has is an awful lot of really obvious theme right on top, because that's what the creators of the movie kind of cared about. You don't see it constantly, but you do see it sometimes. Disney seems to be the worst offender at this point in time, but my example here is intentionally exaggerated and silly, just to kind of make the point. But Elio, I think it was the name of that movie, where it was like supposed to be about some kids like crisis of like, I want to come out, maybe, and maybe I'm gay or whatever. And by the time the movie opened, it wasn't about anything because they stripped all of the LGBTQ theming out of it because it really isn't age appropriate. And then they had nothing. They had nothing left, and nobody saw the movie, and they just spent all this money making this expensive animated movie that nobody's ever gonna watch. So you don't want the theme to be obvious. It should not be highlighted. The better your play, the harder the thought or the theme is to find. Um, as a director, I have wrestled with this on some scripts, sometimes for weeks. It takes me weeks to unlock this. And all I do is just walk around kind of with it simmering in my brain until it hits. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the play Angels in America by Tony Kushner. I directed it a few years ago at University of Arkansas. Um, I did like 4 months of research, and I think I spent 2 months just kind of meditating on the research until I finally hit on the two thematic forces in conflict in that play, which are fear and courage. But it's very hard to tease out because there's a lot of big political ideas said, and there's a lot of stuff about identity politics, and there's a lot of stuff about LGBTQ rights and the AIDS epidemic, and conservatism and progressivism and religion and Mormonism and American history, and like all of this stuff is kind of weaved through this 7 hour play, that's performed in two parts, over, sometime there's part one and part two. and we did one in the fall and one in the spring. It took me forever to get to the crux of, oh, this play is really about fear and courage. It's about the choice between being afraid and being brave. Yeah, 6 months I was working on that play before I hit it. 4 months of research, 2 months just looking at the research and being like, I have no idea what the idea of this play is. It's a very good play, one of the best American plays, and it took me forever to find the theme because it was hidden so nicely by a very smart playwright. Samuel Goldwyn, who ran MGM back in the day, was talking to a writer one time about a script, and the writer apparently said, it's a message picture. We're trying to like send a message. And Samuel Goldwyn looked at him and he shook his head apparently, and he said, if you want to send a message, use Western Union, which, they used to send telegrams. I don't know if you can still send telegrams. But his argument basically being like, the movies is not a place for the message. Like, it's not a place for a message. You can make political movies, right? And you can make movies that do have a message, that are pushing ideas, that really are trying to persuade people to things. But you don't want to be too obvious about it, because if you're too obvious about it, it starts to feel a little like a sermon, or even worse, like a hollow virtue signal, and like it's kind of disingenuous and insincere. So that's what we're talking about here, right? You want it to take a backseat to the plot and the character, but you want all three of these elements to be in strong support of each other. And if they're not, then you probably have a bad play that you have written or are about to perform in or direct or whatever. A successful theme for any play will be pertinent to the audience that's watching it and provide insight into the drama. So it will help you better understand what you're looking at, what you're reading, what you're looking at, and it will be something that the audience can relate to and understands. It's pertinent to their lives. It relates to the day-to-day, to some kind of circumstance that's going on in our current politics or in our current community or whatever it is, right? So that is thought. Let's move on to diction or language. So I believe more often than not, when talking about Aristotle, I see it defined as poetry, the poetry of the thing. Really what he's talking about is the language of the thing. And the language of a drama, of a play text, is far more complex than most people realize. And that's because it has to do two things. It has to be appropriate to the character that's saying it, the setting where it's taking place, the story that it is supporting, the theme that is undergirding the story, and all of the actions and incidents that occur, right? If any of those things are out of alignment, then your language is undermining you rather than helping you. And then the language, which is provided by the playwright, right? In most cases, that's not entirely true. We have devised work where like an ensemble of people will come together and they'll create a work out of thin air through improv and rehearsal work. But most of the time when you're working on a play, it's a playwright has written a play. They've been through readings, they've been through workshops, they've written a script, they've developed a script, they've published a script. You're handed a script. You're expected to learn the words in the script, to take those notes, to learn what you're supposed to say, and the stage directions for how you move, when you move, where you enter, whatever, and then translate it into action. So the words that the characters say have to leave room for the character to act. A better way to say this, and something that I always tell my acting students, is that words do not define action. In a play, words are action in a play, right? So the words are not there to describe what's happening. The words are there to be what's happening. And sometimes what the characters say is not really what's happening, because characters, depending on their motivations, they have reasons to lie, they dissemble, they delude themselves, right? They refuse to see the truth. There's any number of reasons that something that a character says is not true. They may not be a reliable narrator, right? So words do not define action. Words are action, but the words must leave room for the character to act. So when we're talking about diction or language, what we're really talking about are tone, which is the general character of the drama. Not really the mood of the piece, but just kind of the style of it, and it is the mood, but it's also the style. I guess it's both. It's the general overall character. Cadence, which is the rhythm, flow, and speed of the text. The sound of the text, which is our particular auditory impression of it when we hear it, and the imagery in the text, which is the visually descriptive figurative language. You've had all of this before in English class. I'm sure this is review, but it's good to go back over it. So tone, cadence, sound, imagery. Those are the four components of language or diction. Okay? Language reveals character. And the things that it can reveal are things like level of education, social class, geography of origin, right? Somebody from Appalachia is going to use different words in different language than somebody from France, right? And so that is something that's easy to define. Bonjour versus hey y'all. That's a big difference. And we learned a lot about that character just because one says bonjour and one says hey y'all. And same with social class, right? If a character enters in a pair of overalls and the first thing they do is spit on the floor and scratch their balls, probably they're not a very high social class. Whereas if they come in carrying a parasol with their nose in the air and then they sit down at a table with a very fine linen tablecloth and they drink tea from a silver tea service, then, maybe they're a very high social class, right? While they talk about, being on the Queen Mary or something. High social class. They also reveal character motivations, which is why characters do the things they do. This will become more important once we get to Chekhov and Stanislavski and Chekhov and the method in modernism. But motivation is what drives characters. In modern acting, every character has a strong motivation, an objective and a super objective that they are trying to achieve, and everything they do in the course of the play is in pursuit of that. So the motivation, right? And values. Values are attitudes, opinions, cultural beliefs, religious beliefs, spiritual ideas, right? It's the stuff that it gets inculcated into you in childhood, right? That you never really lose because it becomes part of the fabric of who you are. Those are your values, and every character has them, and different characters have different values. Actors nowadays, when they play characters, one of the tricks to it is you can't judge a character. You may not like what a character does, but you can't judge the character for what they do. Your job as the actor is to try to understand it and empathize with it and translate it into action, right? It's very important for a playwright to use diction that is plausible for the stories and the characters that inhabit it. And I always like to share this example with that because I think this is such an excellent example of when this can go wrong. So Stephen Sondheim was he died a few years ago, but he was a very important musical theater writer in the United States. He was active from the 50s until his death in 2020, 2021, somewhere around there. Not sure the exact year. And he famously dominated basically the Broadway musical in the 70s, wrote Sweeney Todd and A Little Night Music and Into the Woods and Something like George and Follies and Company and a whole bunch of stuff that's hugely important to the development of the musical and that still get performed all the time today. His first major job, though, he's a composer and a lyricist, so he writes both the music and the words to songs. But his first major job, when he was first out of grad school, when he was 25 or 26 years old, thanks to a personal connection to Oscar Hammerstein of Rodgers and Hammerstein, he was able to land a gig writing lyrics for the musical West Side Story, which I imagine everybody has heard of. And he was young, 25, 26. And West Side Story is largely considered nowadays to be a masterpiece, one of the great pieces of the musical theater that's ever been written. But there's a song in West Side Story
that Sondheim did the lyrics. He only did the lyrics for West Side Story. Leonard Bernstein wrote the music. But there's a song that opens Act Two. It is sung by three Puerto Rican immigrant girls, all of whom are probably high school dropouts for economic and migratory reasons, who work doing alterations in a dress shop. One of them is the lead character, Maria, and then the other two are her friends, Rosalita and Consuelo, who work there with her. And the song that they sing at the top of Act Two is a song called I Feel Pretty. And Maria has been kind of walking around all day, lovesick. West Side Story is just Romeo and Juliet, right? Reset to 1950s Manhattan, but it's gang violence, and the two lovers are from two racially opposed gangs, a Puerto Rican gang and like a white, I don't know if they're like Irish or Polish, I'm not really sure. And they're fighting over turf in this dilapidated neighborhood that's about to be bulldozed on the Upper West Side to become Lincoln Center. But they don't know that yet. And Maria falls in love with Tony from the white kid gang, and she's been kind of walking around lovesick for the last several days. Her friends are like, "What's up with you?" And she sings this song called "I Feel Pretty," and "I Feel Pretty" has a pretty clever lyric, actually. I'm just first of all going to read you a little like bit of it, just a snippet. If I can turn the page here. So it has a very nice, complicated internal rhyme scheme. So it's the lyrics are just as a sample. I feel charming, oh so charming. It's alarming how charming I feel, and so pretty that I hardly can believe I'm real. See the pretty girl in the mirror there? Who can that attractive girl be? Such a pretty face, such a pretty dress, such a pretty smile, such a pretty me. I feel stunning and entrancing, feel like running and dancing for joy, for I'm loved by a pretty wonderful boy. Um, it's a very popular song. You probably know it. Famously in Dirty Dancing, right? It's a song that her sister keeps saying she's going to sing in the talent show. And then she does that weird Hawaiian number instead for some reason. So anyway, here is what Sondheim has to say about I Feel Pretty. This is from a book that he published a few years before he died called Finishing the Hat, where he collected all of his lyrics that he'd written for everything, songs you'd heard and songs you never had. And then he put notes in there about what's good about them, what's bad about them, how they work, why they work. So this is his thought on that lyric. And he says, having spent a year on the score, rhyming way and day and alone and own and tonight, light, bright, and the like, in order to be faithful to the character's inarticulateness, and knowing that West Side Story was to be my first professional exposure, I was hungry for any opportunity to show off with inner rhymes and trick rhymes. I Feel Pretty, being a playful song to contrast dramatically with the melodrama which was to follow, seemed to be the ideal chance. To this misguided end, the original lyric included the following interlude, which was subsequently cut fortuitously for length, and the interlude, Rosalia and Consuelo sing, "Put on your mantilla, Maria, and put silver combs in your hair, a touch of perfume from Sevilla. There won't be a prettier girl anywhere. You stroll down the street, the toast of Madrid, and most of Madrid falls down at your feet. Those cheers are for you, the plaza is full. When they kill the bull, the ears are for you. Every matador that adores you cries ecstatically, I am yours, you. Drive them insane, they swoon and they drop, the entire population of Spain." It was Sheldon Harnick, an expert lyricist and an old friend, who, after hearing the song at a run-through shortly before we left for our out-of-town tryout, gently pointed out to me that perhaps lines like, "It's alarming how charming I feel," words like stunning, and phrases like an advanced state of shock might not belong in the mouths of Maria and her friends. I had been aware myself of this, and that the play on words in Pretty Wonderful Boy drew attention to the lyric writer rather than the character, but I had hoped no one would notice anything but the cleverness of it. I was wrong. In an advanced state of shock, I quickly rewrote the lyric to make it simpler and more in keeping with the way Maria and the girls expressed themselves in the rest of the score, but my collaborators would have none of it. They liked it the way it was, and is, and I have been embarrassed by it ever since. Yeah, because it's not appropriate to the character, really. It's the writer, the actual writer himself, this 25-year-old, very smart, very clever lyricist showing off, and it's false to the characters. And he's right. And he spent the rest of his life trying to get a production mounted where he could change it, and nobody would ever let him. And I feel terrible for him. And then he died. It's okay. It's West Side Story. It's a masterpiece. Will live. He'll live. And well, he won't. But I mean, like, it's fine. The language must allow room for an actor to add subtext for translation to action. Subtext is a necessary ingredient in order to turn the text of the drama into the action of the theater. You have to have a subtext, you have to have a motivation, right? This is more kind of a modern idea, but even I think back then there was some kind of subtext, if it wasn't necessarily like, what's my motivation, like a method actor nowadays. There still had to be something kind of driving the engine, right? So let's move on to song. As I try to get through this. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I'm not really sorry, but I don't want to kill you with time. So all the things we've talked about up to this point before song are the elements of the drama. These are things that the playwright supplies: the plot, the character, the thought, right? The diction, right? All of this comes in the drama, in the script itself, right? The playwright has already provided it. These last two elements are these two only apply to the theater in performance. They don't apply to the text, just to the performance. So Aristotle's heading song, this is one of those ones that you'll see it translated sometimes as music or sometimes as sound. It doesn't really matter what word you use because it's understood pretty much universally to include not only music but all sound. So what would be included in that? Well, the sound of the text being spoken by the actors, right? The sound of music in the show itself. If there are music cues, then you want to include that in the song, right? Now there are two types of music that you can have in a play. You can have diegetic music and non-diegetic music. Diegetic music is music that comes from inside the world of the play. The source of it is acknowledged or seen. Character comes in, puts a record on a record player, drops the needle, music plays. That's diegetic music because the character is playing the record player. The music is emanating from the character's world. The character made the music happen, right? Character is a saxophonist who is playing in a nightclub and they're doing their gig and there's a whole big band there and everybody's playing and there's a singer and they're singing and all of that is diegetic music. Because that's in the world of the play. It's a story of a clarinet player, a jazz clarinetist, and here's his band, and here's the singer, who's, I don't know, probably his girlfriend or whatever. We can make up the story, whatever we want it to be, but that's diegetic music. Non-diegetic music is music that does not come from the world of the play, but nevertheless is in the play. Most film score is non-diegetic music, right? So if you're thinking about a movie like Inception and there's that fight in like the twisty rotating hallway, right? And there's like that kind of epic orchestral music playing. Yeah, that music is not playing in that hallway, right? It's playing on the movie's soundtrack in order to ratchet up the tension and the drama of the fight in the rotating hallway for the audience in the movie theater or on the couch at home. The characters don't hear that music. The audience does. That's non-diegetic music. It's not from the world of the play. Musicals can kind of go either way here. Musicals can have both diegetic and non-diegetic music. Most music in musicals is non-diegetic, meaning when the characters break into song, it's not because somebody whipped out a banjo and everybody started having a sing-along, right? It's theoretically because they're so moved emotionally that they have lost the ability to speak and now sing because singing is all they can do. And they dance when they are so moved that they can no longer sing, they must dance, right? That's kind of the justification that actors use to kind of ground themselves in it because it's a very non-realistic style. It's not believable. It's not credible to reality. But there are musicals that have diegetic music in them. If you can think of something like Cabaret, where you have performers at a Berlin cabaret in the Weimar Republic, you have the MC, you have Sally Bowles. Some of their numbers are non-diegetic book songs that just evolve naturally out of the dialogue in the scenes in the bedroom or whatever. But then some of the songs are diegetic because these are songs that they are performing on the stage of the nightclub. So it can go either way, right? Chicago has both diegetic and non-diegetic songs, for instance. So that's just examples, but you can have, if you have a scene change in your play where you have like piano music underscoring it, that is non-diegetic music. But if you use that same piano music because the actor comes in and turns on the TV and that music is playing on the TV, then suddenly that music becomes diegetic. And also, it would include silence. Silence is part of the sound. Pauses and breaths, all of that would be included, right? Not just the deliverance of text or music, but also when there is none. That's equally much as a part of song. So, moving on to the last element of poetics, which is spectacle. Spectacle, as we're talking about it here, describes all the visual elements in a production. So that means the staging, how the people are composed on the stage. This image here is from a production of Sunset Boulevard that was just playing on Broadway last year that I very much wanted to see but didn't get to New York to see. I love this image. I love the use of the film projection that it looks like is being broadcast live from that weird optometrist contraption that he has on his face, and then you have these interesting dynamic choreographic poses of the kind of ensemble around him, and there's something really menacing and terrifying about that image. I love it. Great moment. So here's a bit of staging, right, and a bit of technical spectacle that is communicating theme even. So that's something to think about. So staging would be a part of it. Where people enter and exit from, how the bodies are composed together in the moment. In a film, sometimes it's called mise en scène or composition, like blocking composition is what I would call it as a director. Scenery, the actual physical set, the costumes, any kind of effects, special or practical, or whether there's a fog machine, whether there's pyrotechnics, whether there's magic, like illusionist effects, and you have like a Pepper's ghost, which is like this old trick where you kind of use a mirror to create this, to project somebody's image. You use like 2 or 3 mirrors, and you get somebody to stand in a place, and then you can make it look like a ghost appears and disappears through the reflections in the mirror if you do it correctly, right? It's a simple old-timey effect. It's been around since the 19th century. It's really easy to achieve. Pepper's ghost, but like that kind of thing would be an effect. And then composition is just kind of the way that it looks overall. Be very careful not to confuse spectacle, which is the word we use to describe everything you see in the play, with spectacular. Okay? Spectacle does not need to be spectacular. This is kind of a function of when we live too, because coming out of like the 80s and 90s, when there was this kind of thing that happened in American theater where the Brits came in and kind of dominated for 20 years with these import musicals like Phantom and Les Mis and Cats and Mamma Mia and I don't know, you name it. There were a bunch of them. But it was like this weird thing that they were kind of exporting, which sometimes gets called in academic writing McTheater, because it was like a franchised kind of theater. Like if you saw Les Mis in London, and you saw it on Broadway, and you saw it on national tour in your town, and you saw it in Tel Aviv, and you saw it in Oslo, Sweden, you saw the same show every time. Different actors, different language, but everything else was pretty much the same. The costumes were the same, the blocking was the same, the set was the same. Mostly the roles were played the same, because it all basically came with like a how-to manual, right? It was like the goal was to recreate the exact same thing absolutely everywhere, all over the world. And those shows were very reliant on physical spectacle, right? Cats had a big tire that shot fire and flew up to the sky, and then there was like a big staircase that came down, and then Phantom has a chandelier that drops, and Miss Saigon had a helicopter, and One of the most impressive ones that I ever saw was the original production of Sunset Boulevard, which had this giant house set. Like, it was 2 stories and like looked like it was made out of solid gold. But then at one point, it lifted halfway up off the stage, and then like other scenes played underneath of it. And then you had like this weird split screen where it was like over time. It was bonkers. It was spectacular. And so nowadays, I think when most people think about theater spectacle, they think about that kind of a show. And like, yeah, that's fine. That's spectacle. It's spectacular spectacle. But spectacle doesn't have to be spectacular. Um, but spectacle is a required element for theater, for the enacted theater. And this is pretty obvious because theater comes from the Greek word theatron, which literally translates to seeing place. It's about seeing things, right? So you want spectacle because you want things for the audience to see. So let's get back to dramatic structure more broadly. Okay, we're almost to the end of the slides. We do have to watch this rather long clip, but we're getting there, folks. So let's see. Plot structures the play. This is a very important point. I would highlight this, underline it. It will probably be on a test later. Plot structures the play. Dramatic structure is at play from the moments a performance begins. And what do I mean by the moment a performance begins? Well, there are a lot of different ways to begin a performance, and a lot of that in our milieu in America in the 21st century depends a lot on what kind of theater you're in, what kind of actual physical theater building, what type of theater space you are in. So in what is a traditional proscenium theater, and we'll talk about the proscenium when we get closer to modernism, and it actually kind of develops. But this picture is of a proscenium theater, right? So you have this this guy here, and here, and here. This is called the proscenium arch, and it is a portal, right, through which you view the stage, and then you have your grand drape, and then the grand drape will fly out and reveal the set, right? And so that is one way to start the drama. And in a proscenium theater, not always, sometimes you can break the fourth wall, as it's called, but more often than not, particularly in like modernist realist drama, the actors would treat that open space in the proscenium arch like a wall, and they would not acknowledge the presence of the audience. They would pretend to be like in an enclosed four-walled space, and then the audience just can kind of see through this wall. More modern pieces, of course, have a lot of direct address and breaking of the fourth wall and metatextuality and postmodernism, and so, you know, that gets a little muddy. But the idea of the proscenium is a fourth wall. You can see through it, but the actors can't see out of it. That's the theoretical idea of it. But you're going to begin a show in a proscenium theater like that, where you maybe take the house lights out, you have a pre-show announcement, right? Unwrap your candy, don't forget to buy your tickets to our next season. We have a wonderful season, whatever. Maybe somebody comes out and gives a live speech, or maybe it's pre-recorded. Then the house lights go all the way out. Maybe there's a music cue in the dark, the curtain comes up, and then you have light or something that gets revealed. Or you have music, and then the curtain starts to go out, and it's slowly revealing what the lights are already up on, right? Are two ways you could go about it in a proscenium theater. That's different than how you're going to start it in a black box. A black box is literally a black room with a lighting grid and seats. And you go in and you sit down and you're talking to your friends, and how's the show going to start in a black box? Well, more than likely, they'll take the lights down to half. There might be a pre-show announcement. A person might come out and give a speech, or it might be pre-recorded. That's pretty standard because you're going to have to let people know where the fire exits are and what your kind of policies are. And, you know, legally you have to have a thing where you tell people not to videotape it because you've signed contracts for the rights to the script usually. And, you know, there's copyright issues there. So you have to do due diligence legally and don't do it. And then if they do it anyway, well, you know, you warned them, right? So you do your pre-show, and then probably the room is going to go to black, complete black, most of the time. The actors are going to enter in that black, and then the lights are going to come up and reveal the actors already in place like magic, right? That's more often than not how a show will start in a black box. A found space show is one that's done in a place that's not really a theater, usually. An abandoned building, an old office, you know, that 7-Eleven that's been closed down the street for 6 months, and we're going to rent it for a week and we're going to put a play on inside of it or whatever. And I've been to found space pieces that start in all kinds of different ways. One of them was like you went into this like holding room and you waited, and then when it was time for the performance to begin, one of the actors came and got you and brought you in and told you where to sit, right? And they assigned people seats. Or, you may go in and you may sit, and you may find that the only places to sit are like on the set, on the porch, or on a piece of wood, or on this log pile, or like whatever. And then you find that the play is actually environmental, and it's going to happen all around you, and you are a part of the set. You are a part of the world of the play. And they're going to interact with you as though you're in the space, in the room, in the drama. That happens a lot. So how you begin depends entirely on where you are usually, what kind of theater you're in, but also what kind of play you're doing. There are an infinite number of ways that theater can begin. They haven't even all been conceived of. Those are some of the more common ones that I've listed, but there are a million ways. So when a play begins, it must do several things. One of the first is capture the audience's attention. If you don't get the audience's attention in the first few minutes of the play, you're not going to get it. And this is a bad play, and nobody's going to like it. And it's not going to be successful, right? So you got to do something to get the audience's attention. You have to set the tone for the production. Well, what do I mean by set the tone for the production? Well, you have to let the audience know, how will this be presented? What are the rules for this world? So when you go see a basketball game, and a basketball game is itself a type of theater, or at least a type of performance, right? Performance studies would say that it is completely valid as a theater topic, as a performance topic, right? Theater studies and performance studies, discrete from each other. Theater studies is just focused on the stuff that happens in the art of theater, whereas performance studies opens up to all kinds of things that are performances that aren't technically theater. A wedding is a performance, a sporting event is a performance, a funeral is a performance, a graduation ceremony is a performance, right? I mean, you can find performances absolutely everywhere all the time. When you go to a basketball game, and you're going to sit down and watch a basketball game, it doesn't matter whether you're going to see the Knicks or the Nets, or you're going to see your next door neighbor's 8-year-old son's like Pee Wee League team. When you go to the basketball game and you sit down on the bleachers to watch it, you know what the rules are because you know what basketball is and you know how it's played, right? You don't need to define the rules for basketball at the beginning of every basketball game. Theater is not a basketball game, and in theater you do. Every play has its own rules. Every production of a play has its own rules. If I direct Streetcar Named Desire and you direct Streetcar Named Desire, our streetcars may not have the same rules, right? Because we're exploring different themes, we're exploring different ideas, we're more interested in other things inside of it than each other, and we both do perfectly fine productions of Streetcar Named Desire that everybody likes, but they don't follow the same rules. That's pretty common, actually. So, setting the tone. What are the rules? How is this going to be presented? Then you have to introduce the characters. Establish who's who in the drama. Who is the protagonist, the antagonist? We didn't really go into this, and you don't need to know it, but the deuteragonist, the tritagonist, these are just kind of supporting characters. Mentors, allies, like people who are friends or teachers of the protagonist, whatever. You don't need to worry yourself with that, but you do as the playwright, because you need to identify who those people are, right, as you're introducing them. You need to introduce the characters by introducing their moods, their values, again, that those deeply held beliefs that they have from childhood, their relationships with each other. And this must be repeated for each character as they enter, whether they enter at the top of the play or whether they enter in the middle of Act 2. You have to, every time you have a new character, you have to introduce them. And you have to get us acquainted with their moods, values, relationships, etc., right? And then the last thing that it has to do in the beginning is it has to show us this world in balance, because the drama starts when this world in balance gets knocked somehow out of balance. That's the inciting incident that sets the plot in motion. We'll talk about that in a second, right? We'll talk about it now. I knew it was coming. So This is Freytag's Pyramid. Gustav Freytag was a German playwright whose playwriting is less significant a contribution to his work in the theater than this pyramid, which is Freytag's Pyramid, and it models the structure of a plot and names the 6 elements of plot, right? So you have exposition, right? Exposition is all of the information that needs to get communicated to the audience about stuff that has come before this moment so that they understand who these people are, what the situation is, where we are, what's going on, what's at stake. All of that gets laid out in the exposition, right? Then we have our inciting incident. This is the thing that happens that knocks the world out of balance, right? Then we have the rising action. And the rising action is just the build, the suspenseful build to the climax. The climax is the moment where the conflict and reversal happens with the antagonist, whatever that is. And then you have the falling action, much shorter, much faster usually than the rising action, which is the kind of descent from the climax into the denouement, or the resolution. I prefer the word denouement. I don't know why. It's just the one I like. I think because I speak French and it's the French word. I don't know. First one I learned. I'm not sure. But and that's just now the world is back in order, right? The resolution, the denouement, shows them putting the world back into its original order that we were first introduced into it, and all is well, right? All's well that ends well. So we're going to take a look at an example to kind of nail some of this down, particularly like the things that need to happen at the beginning of a play. So I want to look at the first scene of the musical Legally Blonde. Not my first choice. I usually, like I said, do Oklahoma here, but I'm having you watch it. And then I usually do Annie as my backup, but you can't stream it anymore. And the play, not the movie. And then I was going to do She Loves Me, but I didn't want to go through all the trouble of trying to rip the thing to get it onto my computer so that I could show it. So this I had on my hard drive. And so this we're going to look at. It's not my favorite. I have come to terms with Legally Blonde over the years. It's not the writing that bothers me. It's the production. It's this production and the kind of forced aggressiveness and like insincere energy of the thing that makes me kind of want to climb out of a window. But I think it's a very good example for our purposes today, because it has a lot of things that it needs to explain. It has a lot of world building that it has to do. So we're going to take a look at the first scene, which really encompasses like 5 or 6 different locations, thanks to modern stage technology, because they can change the sets so quickly. But we're going to look at the one scene. It jumps locations, but it's one kind of concrete scene. They're still singing the same song through most of it. And I just want you to watch it, and then we're going to go back and I'm going to kind of diagram the opening and how it's doing what it's doing for you as an example. So Legally Blonde, music and lyrics by Lawrence O'Keefe and Nell Benjamin, book by Heather Hach, based on the movie and the novel. I'm sure you've seen the movie. If you haven't seen the play, this was filmed in 2007, which is the same year this musical came out, for MTV, to launch a reality show they had where they were going to like use a reality show to like cast the girl who was replacing Laura Bell Bundy, who plays the lead and who was going to leave the show soon. I don't know why they did this way. I don't know why they gave the audience copious amounts of like cocaine and methamphetamine before it started so that they're rambunctious and rowdy the way that they are. Everything about this makes me really want to claw my eyes out. But it's the forced kind of excitement of the thing and not the writing, which I think is actually very smart. So focusing on the drama, the writing itself, and not the theater, which I think is forced and cheesy. But the writing, which I think is very smart. We're going to take a look at this. So this is the opening scene of Legally Blonde. I'll check in with you when it's over, and then we will do a little outline of it, and we'll be pretty much done with our lecture. All right. Like I said, the presentation of this is a little wacky. You got three girls from the hills walking a chihuahua down the aisle to start the show. I have no idea. MTV, really, really, really bizarre. But anyway, here is the first scene of Legally Blonde, and I will shut my mouth and stop criticizing it.
Princess cut. Are you psyched for what? I just wish I could be there to see when he gets down on one knee. Oh my God. Oh my God. What a without eyes. If there ever was a perfect couple, this one qualifies. Oh my God, your eyes. Oh my God, this is happening. Our own homecoming queen and king. Finally should be trying on a huge engagement ring. Oh my God, you guys! Oh my God! Shut up, Warner! Shut up, Engaged! Oh my God! Okay, everybody sign. Good! Now fall in line, and we'll start the engagement parade. Light candles, single file. Don't forget to smile. Where's the gun, Kate? You look like the maid. Now prepare to serenade. Shh! Oh my God, you guys. Looks like hell's gonna win the prize. If there ever was a perfect couple, this one qualifies. Oh my God, I'm serious. Gil and Warner were meant to be. Not once ever as he could on me. It's just like that couple from Titanic. Only Will would die. Oh my God. 2, 3, 4. Daughter of Downton New, soon to be fiancé. Now that a man chose you, your life begins today. Make him a happy home. Waste not his hard-earned wage, and so he does not roam. Strive not to look your age. Still, if you're out of need, let it be understood. No one can supersede our sacred bond of sisterhood. Oh my God, you guys. Guys, she's not here. What? That makes me crazy in my head. Bruiser, where is Elle? She doesn't have an engagement outfit? Oh my God! She is totally freaking out! She's trapped in the Old Valley Mill? Oh, whoops. Sorry. The Old Valley almost there, but this dress needs to seal the deal. Make a grown man kneel, but it can't come right out and say bride. Can't look like I'm desperate or like I'm waiting for it. I gotta leave Warner his pride, so pride is more implied. Oh my God, you guys. Oh, this week I've had butterflies. Every time he looks at me, it's totally polarized. Oh my God, you guys. So help me dress for my fairy tale. Can't wear something I bought on sale. Love is like forever, this is no time to economize. Oh my God, you guys. Blondes make commissions so easy. Excuse me, have you seen this? It just came in. Oh, it's perfect for a blonde. Right, with a half loop stitch on China silk. But the thing is, you can't use a half loop stitch on China silk. It'll pucker. And you didn't just get this in because I saw it in last May's Vogue. Oh my God, it does. I am not about to buy last year's dress at this year's price. Sells all right through that sales girl's life. It may be perfect for a blonde, but I'm not that blonde. I may be in love, but I'm not stupid, lady. I've got eyes. Oh my God. Elwood, sorry, our mistake. Courtney, take a break. Just ignore her, she hasn't been well. Try this latest from Milan. Go on, try it on. I take care of mine, that's clientele. It's a gift from me today. Oh, Warner, tonight's just perfect.
No, you're perfect.
No, you are.
No, you are.
No, you.
No, you.
You. Me. Okay, I'm even irritating myself.
Now, I want you to know how happy you've made me. I mean, every guy dreams of finding a girl who looks like you. We both know why we're here. I see it in your eyes. I guess it calms my fear to know it's not a surprise. I thought one look at you, looking like a dream come true, would leave me speechless like you always do. But now we're wide awake, and we've got some plans to make. Let's take some action, baby. So, baby, give me a hand. I've got some dreams to make true. I've got the future all planned. It's time to get serious. Time to get serious with you.
I never thought that.
Honey, I'm not finished.
Oh, sorry.
Since I was 2 or 3, my life was planned out neat. I'd get my law degree, and then win my Senate seat. A big white house for us, all of the amenities. 3 kids at least, just like the Kennedys. Here's where our lives begin. But just where do you fit in? I'll break it down now, baby. So, baby, give me a hand. I've got some dreams to make true. I know that you understand. It's time to get serious. It's time to get serious with serious. Gotta wake up and take our journey serious. Don't let the future attorney. You want the moon and sky, then take it, don't be shy. Baby, that's why you and I should break up.
You're breaking up with me, but I thought you were proposing.
Yeah, I did talk to my parents about that, Pooh Bear, but they expect a lot from me. I'm going off to Harvard Law School, and my brother's at Yale Law, and so is his new wife, and she's a Vanderbilt, for Christ's sake.
Oh, so I'm not good enough for you? Warner, I'm from Malibu. I'm not exactly trailer trash here. Richard Simmons is our neighbor.
Elle, if I'm gonna be a senator when I'm 30, I'm gonna need somebody serious. Less of a Marilyn, more of a Jackie. Serious. Somebody classy and not too tacky. Okay, that came out wrong. Baby, let's both be strong. I'm giving no, no, no.
Just shut up. What does that mean? I'm not a Jackie. I'm not serious. But I'm seriously in love with you.
Baby, my future's all planned. I've got some dreams to make true. I thought that you'd understand. It's time to get serious. Time to get serious. Check, please.
Daughter of Delta New, sweetheart, it's been 12 days. Please let us help you through. She's eating Milky Ways. Tommy doesn't want us. I think he should be shot. And let me tell you what, I don't think he's that hot. I do. Well, you're a slut. Look who is talking. Oh, 3 words. Spring break. Must we all descend into madness? Yes. Oh, snap it out. Snap it out. So good to see you. Look, we brought you new magazines. We got Town and Country, and your favorite, the one they named after you, Elle Magazine. Thanks, Star. But I think it's going to take more than Elle and Town and Country to bring me back from my shame spiral. Well, then, sweetie, you are just going to have to hold on, because the new Vogue is not out till next week. Okay. What? Do not tell me ponchos are back in. No. Worse. It's Warner's brother, Peyton Huntington IV, and his bride. Pictures from their wedding. Look. Muffy Vanderbilt. Mommy! Wait a sec. This is the kind of girl Warner wants. Someone serious. Someone loyally. Someone who wears black when nobody's dead. Girls, I have a completely brilliant plan. What you want, what you want is me. But you need to see me in a brand new domain. Well, it's plain. Warner in a different setting. You will see you're getting all of this plus a brain. I'll meet you there at Harvard with a book in my hand. Big sturdy book, big wordy book, full of words I'll understand and write. There is what you'll see it too. What you want is right in front of you. What you want is clear. What you want is right here. What you want is right in front of you. What you want is clear. What you want is right here. Step 1, he's off to Harvard Law, so I get in there too. Step 2, make Warner reassess. Impress him with my high IQ. Step 3, throw a great big wedding. And invite all Delta New. That's great. Nice plan. Now, can we think this through? Harvard Law School? I have a 4.0 average. Yeah, in fashion merchandising. What makes you think you can do this? I'm doing this for love. And love will see me through. Yes, with love on my side, I can't lose. And Harvard can't refuse. A love so pure and true. No lawyers feel up to. Even if they do what you want, sweetheart, is no easy thing. If you're going to swing it, it will wreck your senior spring. Yeah, it's true. First, you'll need an LSAT score of more than 174. So no more parties for you. You'll need a killer essay or do not
school is for boring, ugly, serious people. And you, Button, are none of those things. What you want, Button, hey, you just say the word. But what you want's absurd and costs a whole lot of swag. And hell, why, Button, when you can stay right here, pursue a film career?
How about a nice Birkin bag?
Yes, the East Coast is foreign. There's no film studios. It's cold and dark, no valet parking. All the girls have different noses. Right, Button, it's like the damn frontier.
Tell me what's up there that you can get right here. Guys, love! I'm going there for love. Love I have to win. I can't live without sun or ballet. I can't just walk away. Betray what might have been.
Fine, okay, I'll pay your way if you get it. Make the play. I'm as paid. It's right in front of you.
Hey everybody! It's the Spring Fling Beer Bash Extreme! Not for you! You can either party or get into Harvard Law. Time to study. Go! This year's theme, oh my god! Jamaican me crazy!
What you wanna be out because it's on she won. What you wanna be stuck inside your dorm. What you wanna be party with us all night long. What you wanna be strong.
Be strong! 134, not good enough. Try again. Go!
What you wanna be grooving for but shake the room. What you wanna be proving something and talking. What you wanna be wanting where you is gone. What you wanna hold on.
Hold on. 151. Still not Harvard material. Once again. Go!
What you wanna be breathing in the healthy air. What you wanna be chasing him and he don't care. What you wanna ignore the pity in their looks. What you wanna be sorry God hit me. What you wanna be seeing in the nature. What you wanna be trying to run around. What you wanna be dealing with the people in the heart.
175. 175.
So, gentlemen, Harvard Law grants admission to Adam Cohen and Sundeep Padamadan.
Outstanding.
And now Ms. L. Woods, who was kind enough to send in a headshot.
She's applying.
Apparently,
Well, she has a 4.0 average.
yes, in fashion merchandising.
She did get a 175 on her LSATs. Yes, and there's also a letter of recommendation from Oprah Winfrey.
Gentlemen, I'm not arguing Miss Woods is unqualified, but look at her. Is that the face of Harvard Law?
Multiculturalism.
Excuse me,
We should admit her for reasons of multiculturalism. Exactly.
Gentlemen, please get a hold of yourselves. This is Harvard Law School, not Match.com. Oh, look at that. Oh, what a shame. She didn't bother sending in a personal essay.
How's this for a personal essay? What you want?
Goodness me.
What you want?
Security!
What you want is right.
Who are you?
I'm what you want. Harvard, I'm the purple blue. And to prove it's true, we all flew here on JetBlue. Thank you.
Thank you.
What inspires everyone and admires her and Harvard should too.
No, it's a personal essay.
And essay so boring and
see here, Miss Woods. You can't just barge in here with singing and dancing and ethnic movement. It's a very flashy presentation, but I still don't see one reason to admit you.
How about love? You ever been in love? 'Cause if you have, you'll know that love never accepts defeat. No challenge it can't meet, no place it cannot go. Don't say no to a woman in love. Don't laugh when I say love. Don't think I'm naive. Because even a person who's smart can listen to their heart, can listen and believe. So believe in what love can achieve. Do you believe? Do you believe? Yes, we believe in love. I love you.
Welcome to Harvard!
Okay, so that is the first scene of Legally Blonde. And I just want to kind of quickly talk through. I don't usually teach this piece, like I said, in this lesson, so I just kind of quickly made some notes. But I just want to look at that first scene and kind of how it's functioning and how it's doing these things that we said that the play needs to do in the beginning, right, when it starts. So the first of those things was to capture audience attention. That's kind of in the eye of the beholder. Like I said, I find this production really kind of forced and cheesy and a little bit try-hard, but some people find it absolutely hilarious and charming. I like the writing. I think the writing is smart and funny. I think the production itself is a little much. But how does it get the audience's attention? Well, it's high energy. It's kind of in your face, right? With humor. Sarcastic. It has a non-serious tone. It's self-referential and metatextual, right? So it's using all of this. It's using humor. It's using music. It's using all of this to kind of hook you with its kind of attitude, its lack of seriousness. It has to set the tone, right? Establish the rules. So what are the rules for this? Well, it kind of seems like there are no rules. It's broad comedy. Nothing here is serious. A musical must establish as part of setting the tone that this is a musical, and what music and dance language are in this world, and what that means, and how people break into song and why. That does kind of need to be explained in the opening moments. This world is not concerned with realism, right? That's part of the tone. We have magical costume changes. A girl changes clothes while she slides down a fireman pole that probably doesn't exist. And then the quick change in the store, right, into the engagement dress. The broad characterizations, right? They are playing it big. The thing itself is postmodern, metatextual, self-referential. It seems to know it's a musical. It seems to be making fun of itself. All of that is part of the tone. So you have to introduce the characters. Every time a character enters, you have to introduce them. We meet a few here. The first ones we meet are the Delta News sisters, right? Her sorority sisters. I'm kind of lumping them together. You could do them all individually. But what do we know about the Delta News from what we've gotten? Well, they're kind of silly and frivolous, right? And shallow, right? They're very upset that their friend is eating Milky Ways. That's very shallow, kind of vain. They're very girly. They don't seem very academic. Like, I know this is a school, but it seems like a party school to me. These girls don't seem like very serious students. They seem to be party girls, right? They seem to know an awful lot about drinking and boys. And every single one of them seems to be in college to pursue her MRS in getting married, right? They don't really seem to be very serious women. But they are very supportive of each other, and they are very supportive of
Elle, right? And they seem to be in her camp. So those are all important things that we've learned just in that little bit of watching the play. And there's probably more. It's just that was my kind of surface level notes. We meet Elle, who we can quickly identify as the protagonist, right? She seems to be the one who has the most at stake here. What do we learn about her? Well, just in my little bit of note taking, she's rich, right? She's spoiled. She's something of a fashionista. She is very dedicated to a guy that you are already starting to suspect is probably unworthy of her. People don't take her seriously, right? People, the Harvard admissions people, her parents, the sales girl, right? People, they kind of think she's dumb because of the way she looks. That seems to be a common kind of occurrence. Even people who should know better, like her parents, seem to think she's not really capable of a lot. She seems to hide her light under a bushel. But she has expert knowledge of fashion and beauty, which later in the show, of course, becomes very important. It wins her a very important legal case. And, I mean, obviously she's smart. She's smart enough to ace the LSATs and get into Harvard Law. But she's clearly not Harvard material, right? As evidenced by the fact that she very not realistically shows up to Harvard dressed like a, a circus ringleader with a marching band to be a drum major in a weird dance number. Okay, it's kind of bonkers. We also meet Warner, the fiance character, the boyfriend character. What do we learn about Warner? Well, he also is rich, seems to come from a very influential family, seems to be being groomed his whole life for a career that it doesn't seem like he had any choice in. It seems like it was chosen for him. He seems to be unable or unwilling to stand up to his parents, who seem to be the main thing standing in the way of this engagement, right? They told him no, and he took them at their word. He doesn't fight for her. And the way that he talks to and about Elle, he doesn't seem to respect her much. Sees her as arm candy, right? He calls her a Marilyn and not a Jackie. But of course, the whole point of this show is that she will reveal herself to be more Jackie than Jackie in the end. We also meet Elle's parents. They're rather minor characters, but since we met them, well, what do we know about them? Well, you know, they're rich. They seem kind of frivolous. They're definitely from a leisure class, jet setters. They're on the golf course right on the 9th hole. We don't know what time of day it is, but or what day of the week it is, but I have a feeling it's like a Wednesday when most people would be at work. Mom is just like in a golf cart walking around town with like a cocktail in her hand in broad daylight, right? So that's telling us something. You know, we know they're rich because we know they live in Malibu, which isn't cheap, and the father says he'll pay cash for a Harvard Law education if she gets in, so, you know, that's not a hardship. They seem very laid back, like almost to a fault, very California, like to a point where they seem almost kind of unplugged. They only seem interested in this future path for Elle because she's doing it to get a guy. Before they know that, they don't really think that she is cut out for it. You know, they want to buy her things, a Birkin bag, you know, stay in California, get a nose job, right? So they're kind of materialistic. So that's just surface level, her parents. We meet the Harvard Law Admissions Committee. They're kind of stuffy, buttoned up, but they're also kind of horny, seem interested in her for very superficial and wrong reasons, sexual reasons, not necessarily because of her mind. Or the one guy who's just not interested at all for the exact same reasons because of how she looks. All three of those guys, I think you could say they judge books by their covers. And then the last rule is it has to establish this world in balance. Well, what is this world in balance? Well, it's laid back, right? Los Angeles, California vibe, right? All these people at a party school, it seems like. All of this eventually in the next scene 2, gets traded in for East Coast, like kind of hustle and snobbery. And what is this world in balance? Well, Well, Elle is in a place where she fits in. She's kind of the queen of this world, right? She kind of rules it. And then, of course, in the next scene, she will go to Harvard, where she will be a fish out of water, and she'll be a fish out of the water for the rest of the night. But through the course of this, she kind of finds herself and who she is, and she's more the second person than she ever was the first, it turns out. So that is the opening scene of Legally Blonde. That is how Legally Blonde works in its opening moments, to kind of hook you and feed you information that you need to want to watch the rest of it. And yeah, that's great. So we're going to wrap this up real quick. So other structural components of dramatic structure that you do need to know, and these will probably be on your test. Acts organize the story, and these are larger chunks of the play text. And when they change, it usually indicates a change in time or place. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4, Act 5, right? Every act is a section of the story. The story is organized by those acts, and each change in acts indicates some kind of change in time or place, usually. Scenes. Scenes are discrete segments of the play inside of the acts, and they usually take place in one time and place, right? Over the course of a discrete amount of time that scene is taking place. 6 p.m. Wednesday, and then the scene plays out. Now it's 6:30 p.m. Wednesday, and then we go on to the next scene, which is like 7 p.m. the next day or whatever, right? A discrete segment of a play in one time and place inside the act, which is organizing the story by changes in time and place, right? Then prologue. Not every play has a prologue, but that's an introductory scene, an expository introductory scene. Gives you information that you need. Epilogue, which is a concluding scene or speech that kind of wraps things up. And then a beat is an individual moment of action, and a beat is a smaller unit inside of a scene. Every individual action is a beat. Why do we call them beats? That's a very good question. There is a urban legend that there was a Russian director who was giving some kind of master class or a talk somewhere and talking about his process and how they rehearse the work in Russia. And somebody asked him, well, like, how do you really like focus in on the work? And he said, well, we do it beat by beat, meaning bit by bit, but beat by beat, because he was Russian, and so that's just how it came to be. I don't believe that story. I don't believe that story at all. I don't know why we call them beats, but beats are the individual bits of action. Every beat is an action that is played. Sometimes in a play script, a modern play script, you will get line, and then you'll get a stage direction that just says beat, and then you'll get a character's line. That beat is not a pause. That beat is some kind of nonverbal action that one character plays on another. And part of the rehearsal of that is finding what that action is, and interpolating it. Common act structures. There are 2 common act structures. There are really 3 common act structures, 4 common act structures. Who are we getting? The oldest of these, which we'll encounter again next week when we do Renaissance, is the 5-act structure. The 5-act structure basically is the Freytag pyramid as 5 acts. So Act 1 is exposition, Act 2 is your rising action, Act 3 is your climax, Act 4 is your falling action, Act 5 is your denouement. That's it. And that's a 5-act structure, a classical 5-act structure. Shakespeare's plays are in a 5-act structure. A lot of old plays are in a 5-act structure, like Renaissance and beyond. Then later we develop a 3-act structure, right? So a 3-act structure is like the great American, like the well-made play, or the great American play that kind of happens in the 1920s, the kind of literary American play, is a 3-act play. It was considered kind of the perfect structure. Our movies and television shows to this day now are structured in a 3-act structure. So you may wonder, what are the 3 acts? Well, Act 1 is the setup, Act 2 is the confrontation, and Act 3 is the resolution. And you can look at any movie and see that pattern repeating again and again and again. The more kind of commonplace thing now is a 2-act structure, where you have Act 1, Act 2. Basically, Act 1, you get your character up a tree in peril, and then you go to intermission, and then Act 2, you come back, and you get them out of peril, and you get them through the climax and the denouement. Right. It's not the climax peril, but it is like some kind of, you get them up a tree and with no options, and then you take a break. And then when you come back, you get them out of the tree, you get them to the climax through the falling action and to the denouement. And then there's an additional one, which is a one-act structure, which is just intermissionless. It can be 30 minutes long. It can be 2 hours long. It just doesn't stop. It just continuous action for the entire runtime, and then it's over. And that kind of came about in the 60s, got very fashionable. Then it kind of fell out of fashion. You see it sometimes you don't. And then, of course, there's like short one-acts, like your high school used to do or whatever, which, those are ubiquitous. They're absolutely everywhere, and they always have been. Other plot structures that you should be aware of. Nonlinear plots. This image here is a poster for the movie Weapons, which is the most recent movie that I saw that has a nonlinear plot, right? We are seeing the same kind of events a couple of times often in that movie from different people's perspectives. We're encountering events again, but now from a different person's perspective, so we're getting more information on it. The movie Magnolia works this way, right? You meet a character, you go through an event, then you meet another character who's also involved in that event, but now you get a different perspective on it. A terrible movie that does this is the movie Crash, the movie where racism is so evil it pushes Sandra Bullock down the stairs, right? Terrible movie, really silly, takes itself way too seriously, especially to have such a dunderheaded message about such an important issue, but nonlinear, right? Same kind of deal. A cyclical plot moves in a circle. The most famous of these is an old Austrian play by Arthur Schnitzler called La Ronde. There are 10 characters of various classes of German society, our Austrian society. There's a chambermaid, there's a prostitute, there's a dragoon, there's a king, there's a count. And each scene is a seduction scene of these couples. And they're seducing. And the play ends up looping back around to the first character, and the moral of the play is it doesn't matter whether you're a prostitute, a chambermaid, a dragoon, or a king, you're all going to die of syphilis because it's Austria in the 19th century, and that's literally what the play is about. But it's a cyclical plot because it goes in a circle. It ends where it began, right? And then an episodic plot doesn't really have a through line, just so much a series of events that happen that aren't necessarily connected through connective tissue of a driving plot. But an event happens, then an event happens, then an event happens, then an event happens. I'm trying to think of a good example of a episodic plot, but I can't really think of one. It's very late. I'm recording this very late because I was taking care of some stuff earlier, and I think it's like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I slept for like an hour, and then I got up and did this. So a brief word on style and genre. We are almost done with the lecture, folks, I promise. Genre. In theater, there are only 3. We've already met 2, tragedy and comedy. They don't really change. I mean, they change what they look like, how they function on a stage over time, but the essential ingredients stay the same. And there's a 3rd, melodrama. Melodrama doesn't really get going until like modernism in the 19th century, but it is a musically accompanied drama with high stakes kind of shenanigans. This is when we're talking about like the girl is tied to the railroad tracks or the log in the sawmill by the mustache twirling villain, and the hero has to save the day, right? Melodrama, that's the 3rd. And soap opera is melodrama, right? So that's the 3rd genre in theater. That's it. Those are the only genres. And then style develops over time through history across locations. So as we're going through this class, we're going to look at different periods of history, and those are things that were the style, that were the mode, that were the way of doing things at a specific moment in time, right? So in the Renaissance, plays were 5 acts. Plays were either histories or romances or comedies or tragedies. A comedy ends in a wedding. A tragedy involves king brought low, right? Comedies are about working class or middle class people and always end in a wedding. Everything's in 5 acts. Everything's in blank verse, right? These are the way that things were kind of done then. Then we move on, and the modes change, the fashions change, the way we do things changes. Jacobean drama becomes more violent. It becomes revenge tragedies, right? It becomes the Duchess of Malfi, where there's a werewolf character, and there's a bunch of murders and plottings and revenges, and it's kind of like a horror movie almost, right? But it's still structurally looks like Shakespeare, reads like Shakespeare. The poetry's full of like awful imagery about like rotting maggots and meat and like rotten meat and corpses, and it's gross. But it still kind of functions the same. But by the time you get to like the Restoration in England in like the 1600s, suddenly now we have women in the drama. The lines are all in prose. We have a very sexual content. We're making fun of Puritans, right? This is a very different style than what was going on in Elizabethan times. And then we move on from that into modernism. We get melodrama. We get Chekhov. We get Eugene O'Neill. We get Tennessee Williams, right? This is just privileging very British and American writers. But all of these things are a mode, right? They're a style at a time, a way that things are done. And then they pass and we move on. But those things become style later. Everything that has come before is now available to anyone who's working now as a style. So every period we study continues to exist and continues to be practiced, but it is practiced because it is chosen as a specific style, because it is underlining or highlighting something about a text or about a plot or about a character or something that we're trying to draw forth. So like different things that we see throughout history, we have the Elizabethan theater, we have musical theater that develops, we have Brechtian theater in Germany in the Weimar Republic in the 1920s and 30s, we have absurdism that comes about like during and after World War II, right, and the beginning of postmodernism, right. All of these things have fallen out of fashion with the exception of musical theater, which has morphed into its own kind of modern thing. But people still do all of these things and they still use all of these different things, but they become style. You can do an absurdist style. You can do a Brechtian style. You can use musical theater as a style. Even like playwrights become a style, right? Shakespeare is a style now. Chekhov is a style now. Pinter is a style now. So, it's just style is the stuff that came before that we can recycle and use as aesthetic choices in the drama. So, to wrap up the lecture, finally, I'm so sorry that this was so long. Thank you for your patience. We needed to watch those clips, and that was really what took a lot of time. I have gone ahead and made my final decisions on the viewing. I'm always futzing with the viewing, which is why it takes me forever to do stuff sometimes in here. Everything we're watching, as far as the actual pieces of stuff that we're watching, the theater pieces themselves, except for the one in Module 7, are available for free from the TCC library going forward, including this week's. So Module 7 is the first week of Contemporary. We're going to watch Come From Away, which you can only watch on Apple Plus. Sorry, but I watched it again tonight to make sure that I did want to go through with that because I may create access problems. I don't know. And I do. I do. I think it is just too good an example of contemporary staging practice. And it's a really interesting and neat musical, and I think you guys will like it. And that way you get to see two musicals, which I think is important. An old one and a new one. Today we're going to watch the old one, and that is Oklahoma. And I'm not giving you any supplementary reading or viewings because Oklahoma is 2 hours, 56 minutes, and 55 seconds long. And I have no idea, because I'm still recording, how long this lecture is, but I feel like I've been at this for like 2.5 hours. So that's plenty. That's plenty for you to do. Plus you have your essay question, plus you have your discussion prompt, plus you have your quiz. So that's fine. So you're watching Rodgers and Hammerstein's musical Oklahoma. There are two film versions of Oklahoma. There is one with Shirley Jones and Gordon MacRae from the 1950s. We are not watching that. We are watching the one that is a filmed version of the Royal National Theatre production from 1999 with Hugh Jackman. And I have the bibliography information here for you. But I think it's a very good lesson for you to learn how to find it in the library catalog, because you are college students, and this is a good skill for you to learn. So I have not given you just the address to copy and paste. I blacked it out on this slide on purpose so that you would have to go to the library homepage and search it in the card catalog and find it. But use this information, Stanza Media Limited, Trevor Nunn, 1999, the runtime, to make sure that you're watching the right one, because it is there and it is available online and you can stream it there. And it is a very good production of Oklahoma, so it's worth the 3 hours to watch it. And I apologize for the long viewings. I thank you for your patience with this lecture and those long clips. You guys are awesome, and I will have grades for you on Tuesday. Thank you so much, and I will lecture you again next week. Have a great week, guys.